They were already landing when I realized the shouting was for me. The wind tore at my coat. Gravel lifted off the ground like it was alive. Two military-style helicopters, black, unmarked, dropping out of the gray sky onto an empty field across the road. Men in headsets jumped out, scanning faces, yelling over the blades. "Where's the nurse? Where is the nurse?" And the terrifying part? I was walking home after being fired, with my name still echoing in my ears. I froze, because 5 minutes earlier, I had told myself my life was officially over. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my story of betrayal, and if you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that subscribe button, because you are not alone. Here's how it happened. I need to rewind slowly, because what led to those helicopters began with a single sentence spoken in a carpeted office that smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant. "You're being let go, effective immediately." No warning, no compassion, just a folder slid across a desk like it was evidence. I remember nodding, smiling even, the way people do when their brain refuses to accept reality. My badge was taken, my locker sealed, my last paycheck printed like hush money. I was a nurse, not careless, not reckless. A nurse who stayed late, who covered shifts, who held hands when families couldn't. But someone needed a scapegoat. And I didn't know yet that the same people who fired me were about to beg for my life-saving skills in public. Outside, the sky was low and bruised. I chose to walk home because I needed to feel the ground, needed to remind myself I still existed. My phone buzzed nonstop in my pocket. I ignored it. That's when the memory hit me, sharp and unwelcome. I was reading comments on my YouTube videos the other day, and I realized I wasn't the only one who had been blindsided by people they trusted the most. Doctors, managers, institutions, all smiling until they weren't. Back then, though, I didn't have a channel. I didn't have an audience. I had a cardboard box of my things and a knot in my chest that wouldn't loosen. Every step home felt heavier. I kept replaying the meeting in my head, searching for the exact moment everything turned. Because the truth is, this didn't start that morning. It started weeks earlier. A patient crash, an understaffed ward, a doctor who ignored my warnings. I documented everything: times, vitals, requests. I did what nurses are trained to do: protect the patient first. The patient survived. The system didn't forgive me. When something went wrong later, something I wasn't even present for, my name was suddenly convenient. Protocol deviation, they called it. No hearing, no chance to speak. Just betrayal, dressed up as procedure. As I crossed the road near the old industrial park, the sound came first, a deep mechanical thunder rolling through my chest. I looked up. At first, I thought it was a storm. Then I saw the lights. People slowed their cars, a delivery driver pulled over, and then the helicopters descended, violent, precise, intentional. Dust everywhere. The world narrowed to noise and motion. A man ran toward the sidewalk, pointing at pedestrians, his voice amplified by panic. "Is there a nurse here? We need a trauma nurse now!" My heart slammed, because I was still wearing my scrubs. Hospital logo ripped off, name tag missing, but unmistakable. I didn't move. I remember thinking, this isn't my problem anymore. I had just been told I wasn't good enough to belong inside those walls. Another shout cut through the air. "She's here! Blue scrubs! Ma'am! Ma'am!" Every instinct screamed at me to run. Because here's what they don't tell you about betrayal. It doesn't just break your trust, it breaks your identity. For a split second, I wasn't a nurse. I was unemployed, disposable, replaced. But then I saw the stretcher. A body, too still. Blood soaking through gauze that wasn't working. And my hands, they remembered before my heart could argue. I stepped forward. "I'm a nurse." My voice didn't sound like mine. His radio crackled. Someone was screaming on the other end. He looked back at me, eyes wide. "Please," he said, "we don't have anyone else." That was the moment. The exact moment They didn't look powerful standing there. Not without their office. Not without the badge, the authority, the carefully rehearsed confidence. They looked scared. The helicopters roared behind them, wind flattening their coat against their body. Their hair was a mess. Their eyes kept flicking between me and the stretcher, like they were watching two disasters collide. This was the administrator, the one who signed the termination papers, the one who never once met my eyes during the meeting. For a second, no one moved. The world hung in this impossible pause, sirens screaming in the distance, rotors chopping the air, strangers holding their breath. Then the medic shouted again, "We're losing him! We need hands, now!" My body moved before my resentment could stop it. "Kneel in slightly," I said automatically. "What's the blood pressure?" "Dropping fast," someone replied. I reached the stretcher. The patient was young, too young, his face gray, lips tinged blue, a massive abdominal wound hastily packed. Whoever had done first aid had done their best, but it wasn't enough. I pressed my hands in, firm, precise. "Where's the IV?" I asked. Silence. They looked at each other. The administrator swallowed hard. We were told a nurse was nearby." I let out a breath that was half laugh, half disbelief. "You landed 2 helicopters without a trauma kit?" No answer. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a hospital response. This was a mistake, a very expensive, very public one. Someone high up had panicked, someone had called in a favor, and now, instead of a controlled transfer, they had chaos on a roadside. I stripped off my coat, rolled up my sleeves. "Listen carefully," I said. "You're going to do exactly what I say or he dies. Understood?" They nodded. Everyone nodded, even the administrator. The irony burned. Minutes blurred. I worked with what little they had. Compression, airway positioning, constant monitoring, talking to the patient even when he couldn't respond because I knew hearing might be the last thing to go. "You're not alone," I told them. "Stay with me." The wind carried my words away, but I kept talking anyway. That's when the administrator stepped closer, too close. "I didn't know this would happen," they shouted over the noise. "If I had known—" "Stop," I snapped. I finally looked up at them. "You knew exactly what you were doing when you fired me." Their mouth opened, closed. "That decision," I continued, my hands still steady, "wasn't about safety. It was about optics, and now your optics are bleeding out on asphalt." Their face crumpled. "I can fix this," they said desperately. "I can get you reinstated, back pay, a letter, whatever you want." The words hit harder than any insult, because there it was, the truth. My career, my years of service, reduced to a bargaining chip. I leaned closer so only they could hear me. "This," I said quietly, "isn't about me." I went back to the patient. Time stretched. Finally, another ambulance arrived, this one properly equipped. A real trauma team jumped out, fast and focused. They took over seamlessly. As they loaded the stretcher, one of the paramedics looked at me. "You saved his life," she said. The words should have felt triumphant. They didn't, because as the helicopters lifted off again, empty now, humiliatingly unnecessary, I felt the weight of what I had just done settle into my bones. I had proven my worth to people who never deserved it. The administrator lingered as the scene cleared. Cars started moving again. Dust settled. Normal life crept back like nothing extraordinary had happened. They walked toward me slowly. "I owe you an apology," they said. I laughed. It came out sharp. "You owe me the truth," I replied. "Why was I really fired?" They hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. But then they spoke, and what they said made my stomach drop. It wasn't just the incident. There was pressure from above, from someone you reported. My pulse spiked. "Who?" I asked. They glanced around nervously, then leaned in. "The surgeon, the one everyone protects." My mind flashed back. Late nights, ignored warnings, the chart I documented obsessively. "You reported his negligence. He threatened to sue, said heads would roll." Mine had rolled first. "And now?" I asked. They exhaled shakily. "Now he's in surgery for internal bleeding." The world tilted. "You mean—" "Yes," they said. "The man you just helped save? That's his son." Silence roared louder than the helicopters ever had. Everything connected in a way that made my skin crawl. The firing, the urgency, the desperation defined me. They hadn't landed helicopters for a nurse. They had landed them for me, because I was the one person who knew exactly how bad things could get. And I realized something terrifying. They didn't just need my skills. They needed my silence. The administrator straightened, trying to reclaim authority. "We can still make this right, but you need to be careful about what you say, about what you do next." There it was, the threat, soft, polite, unmistakable. I picked up my box of belongings from where I'd set it down earlier. "I already am careful," I said. I started walking home again, but with every step, my phone buzzed harder in my pocket. Missed calls, unknown numbers, voicemails stacking up. The system had noticed, and it was waking up. I didn't answer the phone. I let it vibrate in my pocket like a trapped insect, furious and relentless, while I kept walking. Every step away from that road felt like I was peeling myself out of a nightmare, except nightmares usually end when you wake up. This one followed me home. By the time I reached my apartment building, I had 14 missed calls, 3 voicemails, 2 texts that simply said, "Please call back. Urgent." Urgent. That word used to mean patient care. Now it meant damage control. Inside my apartment, the silence hit me hard. No monitors beeping, no overhead announcements, just the hum of the fridge and the distant sound of traffic. I dropped the box by the door and finally checked the voicemails. The first was the administrator. Their voice was different now, careful, polished, afraid. "We need to talk today, please." The second voicemail made my hands go cold. It was the surgeon's voice, the one everyone protected, calm, controlled, like nothing in the world ever surprised him. "This is Dr. Keller. I understand you were present earlier. I'd like to clear up a few misunderstandings." Misunderstandings. I sat down hard on the couch. The third voicemail wasn't from the hospital at all. It was from an unknown number, a man's voice, older, not rushed. "You did the right thing today, but you should know people are very nervous. Be careful." No name, no explanation, just a warning. I stared at the wall for a long time. Then I did something I hadn't done since the firing. I opened my laptop. I logged into my old email, the one I used only for work, the one I was told would be deactivated within the hour. It still worked. That alone told me something was wrong. I searched my sent folder, found the report, the one I had filed weeks ago, time-stamped, detailed, unemotional. Evidence. I reread it slowly. Ignored warnings, delayed response, vital signs dismissed. At the time, I had believed the system would protect me for doing the right thing. Now I understood how naive that was. Another call came in. This time I answered. "Hello?" I said. "Thank God," the administrator breathed. "You need to come in." "No," I replied simply. A pause. "They're asking questions about why you were terminated, about why you were on site." "Then tell them the truth." Silence again. "That's complicated," they said finally. "Not really. It's uncomfortable. That's different." They lowered their voice. "This is bigger than you think." I laughed softly. It always is. After we hung up, I sat there staring at my hands. They were steady now, too steady. I realized an unsettling thing. I wasn't scared anymore. I was clear. That night, sleep didn't come. Instead, memories did. The patient who coded while we waited for approval, the chart altered after the fact, the meeting where my words were twisted until they sounded like admissions of guilt. I had swallowed it all because that's what nurses do. We absorb trauma so others don't have to. But the helicopters had ripped that quiet obedience out of me. By morning, my inbox was full. HR, risk management, legal. They all wanted a conversation. None of them wanted accountability. I brewed coffee I didn't drink and watched the news instead. And there it was. A shaky phone video already circulating online. 2 helicopters, medics shouting, a woman in blue scrubs kneeling in the dirt. The caption read, "Fired nurse saves life after hospital dumps her." My chest tightened. The comments were pouring in, people arguing, people guessing, people asking the question the hospital feared most. Why was she fired? My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from a colleague. "They're scrambling. They didn't expect this to go public." Another message followed. "Dr. Keller is furious, but also scared." That's when I understood the leverage I had and how dangerous it was. I hadn't planned to speak out. I hadn't planned anything. But the story was moving without me now, shaping itself in the hands of strangers. By noon, there was a knock at my door. 2 people stood outside. One was a woman in a tailored suit holding a leather folder. The other was hospital security. "We'd like to talk," she said pleasantly. I didn't invite them in. "You can talk from there." Her smile thinned. "This doesn't have to be adversarial." "It already is," I replied. She introduced herself as legal counsel. She talked about confidentiality agreements, about reputational harm, about how emotional moments can be misinterpreted. I listened without interrupting. Then I asked one question. "Is the report I filed still on record?" She hesitated just long enough. "Technically," she said, "yes." "Good. So is the video." The security guard shifted uncomfortably. The lawyer closed her folder. "You need to understand," she said quietly, "there are powerful people involved." I nodded. "I've met them," I said. "They fired me." After they left, I locked the door and slid down against it, heart racing, because now it was real. They weren't asking me to come back. They were trying to contain me. That afternoon, I didn't call a lawyer. Not yet. Instead, I called someone who had stood beside me at 3 a.m. during codes that never made the news. Someone who knew exactly how things really worked behind hospital walls. A charge nurse. She answered on the first ring. "I saw the video," she said quietly. "Are you okay?" "No," I replied, "but I'm not wrong." She exhaled. "Then listen carefully. They're not doing an internal review to clear your name. They're doing it to control the narrative." I already knew that, but hearing it out loud made my stomach tighten. "They'll isolate you," she continued. "They'll act supportive. They'll say words like process and policy, and they'll try to get you to contradict yourself." "What if I don't?" I asked. There was a pause. "Then they'll try something else." The next morning, I walked into the hospital, not as an employee, not as a guest, but as a liability. The lobby looked the same. Too clean, too calm, like nothing bad had ever happened there. People stared. Some recognized me from the video. Some looked away. I was escorted into a conference room I'd never been in before. No windows, long table, bottled water placed with intention. 5 people were already seated. HR, legal, risk management, the administrator, and at the far end of the table, Dr. Keller, the surgeon, the man who never looked nervous in the OR, except now his jaw was tight, his hands folded too neatly, his eyes avoided mine. The woman from legal gestured for me to sit. "This is an informal conversation. We're just here to understand what happened." I sat down. "Then you should start by telling the truth," I said. A flicker of irritation crossed her face. "We'll ask the questions," she replied. They did. About the incident weeks ago, about my documentation, about the roadside emergency. I answered calmly, clearly, chronologically. No emotion, no exaggeration. Facts are dangerous when they're consistent. Dr. Keller shifted in his chair. At one point, he interrupted me. "That's not how I remember it," he said smoothly. I turned to him. "That's because you weren't there," I replied. The room went silent. The administrator cleared their throat. "Let's keep this professional," they said. "I am. My license depends on it." That's when legal slid a paper across the table. And reinstatement offer. Immediate return. Full benefits. Back pay. In exchange for a confidentiality agreement. No public statements. No interviews. No social media. The offer sat between us like a bribe wrapped in politeness. I looked at it for a long time. Then I pushed it back. No. The word echoed louder than I expected. Dr. Keller finally looked at me. "You're being emotional," he said. "This isn't personal." I felt something inside me snap into place, cold, precise. "You reported me," he continued, voice rising just enough to sound offended. "You nearly ruined my career." I met his gaze. "No," I said. "I tried to save your patient, your son, twice." His face drained of color. The room exploded into overlapping voices. "That's enough," legal snapped. "We are not discussing family." "You already did when you fired me." I stood up. "You can keep your job offer. You can keep your silence, but I'm done carrying this for you." The administrator stood too. "If you walk out," they warned, "you may never work in this city again." I picked up my bag. Then maybe the city needs fewer hospitals like this. I left. Outside, my hands were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline. By the time I reached my car, my phone was already buzzing. a journalist, then another, then another. The story had evolved. Not just a fired nurse, a cover-up. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, lights off, phone face down. I thought about the patient on the stretcher, about the son who lived, about the father who almost destroyed me to protect himself. I thought about the comments I'd read, people saying, "This is why nurses burn out. This is why the system is broken." And I realized something terrifying and freeing at the same time. They couldn't put this back in the box. The next morning, a subpoena arrived. Not for me, for the hospital. Dr. Keller was being investigated. And suddenly, everyone who had ignored me wanted to hear my voice. But just as I started to believe the truth might actually matter, I received one final message. Unknown number. 3 words. Choose carefully. Tonight. I looked out the window. A car I didn't recognize was parked across the street, engine running. I didn't turn the lights on. I stayed exactly where I was, watching the reflection of that unfamiliar car shimmer faintly in the dark glass of my window. The engine idled too smoothly, too patiently. This wasn't coincidence. This was pressure. My phone buzzed again, same unknown number. "You don't understand what you're stepping into." I typed back before fear could talk me out of it. "Then explain it." 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Then a reply came through. "Meet us. No cameras, no press. 1 chance." I didn't respond. Because here's the thing about intimidation. It only works if you believe you're powerless. And after the helicopters, after the meeting, after walking out on my own terms, I wasn't. Still, I didn't sleep. I packed a small bag, charged my phone, forwarded every email, every document, every message to 3 different people I trusted, one of them a journalist who had already promised me something rare: transparency without theatrics. At 6:14 a.m., the car across the street finally pulled away. By 8 a.m., my story was everywhere. Not sensationalized, not exaggerated, just facts. A nurse fired after reporting negligence. A public emergency exposing the lie. A hospital scrambling to contain the damage. By 2 p.m., Dr. Keller was placed on administrative leave. By 3 p.m., the administrator resigned. And by 4 p.m., my phone rang with a call I never expected. "Hello?" I answered. "This is the State Medical Board." My heart dropped. "We'd like you to testify." That night I finally sat down and cried. Not the pretty kind, the kind that shakes you, the kind that comes when your body realizes the danger has passed, but the cost hasn't. Days turned into weeks. Investigations expanded. Other nurses came forward. Charts were re-examined. Patterns emerged. The system didn't collapse, but it cracked. And through it all, one question followed me everywhere. Was it worth it? I didn't have an answer until the letter arrived. Handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single page. "My son is alive because of you. I was wrong. I'm sorry." No signature. I sat there a long time, holding that paper like it might dissolve. I never went back to that hospital. I didn't need to, because something else happened, something none of us expected. Nurses across the country started sending messages, stories, proof. People who had been silenced finally realized someone had survived speaking up, and that changed everything. But the truth is, this story doesn't end with justice wrapped in a bow. There were consequences. I lost friends. I lost opportunities. I lost the illusion that doing the right thing is always rewarded. But I gained something else, my voice. And as I started sharing this story, right here, something incredible happened. I wasn't alone anymore, and neither are you. But the most shocking part? The system didn't come after me again, because now they were watching, and they were afraid. The fear didn't disappear overnight. It just changed shape. At first, it was loud. Calls, emails, messages from people who suddenly wanted my side of the story. Reporters, advocates, lawyers who spoke in careful tones and never promised outcomes. Then, slowly, it went quiet. Too quiet. No more unknown cars, no more late-night warnings, no more pressure. That silence was more unsettling than the chaos had ever been. Because when institutions stop fighting, it usually means they're regrouping. I took a temporary job outside the city, non-clinical. Paperwork, training, safe, boring. The kind of work that doesn't make waves. But everywhere I went, people knew my face. At grocery stores, at cafes, even at traffic lights, when someone rolled down their window and said, "You're the nurse." Sometimes it came with gratitude, sometimes with anger. "You should have kept quiet," one man muttered as he passed me in a parking lot. "My wife works there. Now everything's a mess." I didn't respond, because silence, I'd learned, is only powerful when it's chosen. One evening, as I was leaving work, my phone vibrated with a message from a number I hadn't seen before. "Private number. Please answer." I hesitated. Then I picked up. "This is her," I said. A familiar voice answered, measured, authoritative, unmistakably practiced. "This is Dr. Keller." I stopped walking. The world narrowed again, just like it had on the roadside. "He said I was not to contact you," he continued, "but I need you to hear this from me directly." I didn't speak. "My career is over," he said flatly, "not just here, everywhere." I felt no satisfaction, no victory, just a strange, hollow weight. "They reviewed everything," he went on, "not just your report, others, years' worth." A pause. I convinced myself I was untouchable. I leaned against my car. "That's the problem," I said quietly. "You were." He exhaled slowly. "My son asks about you. He remembers your voice. He wants to thank you." The words hit me harder than any threat ever had. "I can't," I replied. "I'm sorry." "I understand," he said. Then, after a beat, "But someone else wanted me to call you." My stomach tightened. "Who?" "The board and legal counsel. There's another issue." The silence stretched. "What issue?" I asked. "They found something," he said carefully. "A pattern of altered records, not by me." Cold spread through my chest. "Then by who?" He hesitated. "Administration, risk management, people above both of us." I closed my eyes. Of course. The surgeon had been protected, but only because he was useful. The real architects had stayed invisible. Until now. "They need your testimony again," he said, publicly. I laughed once without humor. "I already testified." "Yes," he said, "but this time it won't be internal. It won't be controlled." I knew what he was saying. A hearing, open records, names. "They're offering you protection," he added, "whistleblower status, full immunity." "And if I say no?" I asked. "They'll proceed anyway, but without you, it'll be slower. messier. And with me, I said, explosive. That night I sat alone with that word, explosive. I thought about the nurses who had messaged me in secret, about the ones still working double shifts under people who erased mistakes with a keystroke. I thought about the helicopters again, how quickly power had panicked when its image cracked. And I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. This wasn't over because I had spoken once. It was only over if I stopped speaking. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. The night before it began, I couldn't sleep. At 2:37 a.m., my phone buzzed, a message from an encrypted number. If you testify tomorrow, people will fall. Some of them don't deserve it. My hand shook. Another message followed. You still have time to walk away. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, because this time the threat wasn't about me. It was about collateral damage. People with families, people who had followed orders, people who looked the other way and told themselves it wasn't their job to stop it. And suddenly, the choice felt heavier than ever before. I placed my phone face down on the table. Outside, the city slept peacefully, unaware that by morning, names would be spoken that had never been spoken out loud, and once spoken, they could never be taken back. The hearing room was colder than I expected. Not physically, though the air conditioning hummed like it was trying to erase warmth, but emotionally. Cold in the way places are when truth is about to be dissected by people who pretend it's just data. Rows of seats filled behind me, journalists, nurses, hospital staff who wouldn't meet my eyes. Across the room sat the people who had once decided my fate with a folder and a signature. Different suits, same faces. A small red light blinked on the camera. We were live. The chair of the board cleared her throat. This session will address allegations of systemic record manipulation, retaliation, and patient endangerment. I felt every eye turn toward me. Miss, she continued, you may begin. I stood. For a moment, my mind went blank. Then I remembered the helicopters. I remembered the weight of that patient's blood on my hands, the way my name had been erased from the system in less than an hour, and I started talking. I told them everything. Not dramatically, not emotionally, chronologically. Dates, times, names. I described how reports were filed and quietly edited, how incident reviews disappeared into closed folders, how nurses who documented too carefully were labeled difficult. I watched faces change as I spoke. Some hardened, some paled. Then I named the first administrator. Gasps rippled through the room. Legal objections flew, but the chair overruled them. Let her continue. I named the second, then the third, and finally I explained the firing. How quickly, I said, voice steady, a system will sacrifice a nurse to protect its image. The camera zoomed slightly. I could feel it. Then something unexpected happened. A man stood up in the back row. I want to speak, he said loudly. Security moved, but the chair raised a hand. Identify yourself. I'm a hospital IT auditor, former. My breath caught. He held up a flash drive. I was asked to overwrite logs. I refused. I was terminated 3 weeks later. A murmur swept the room. Then a woman stood. I'm a billing coordinator. I was instructed to backdate approvals. Another voice joined, then another. One by one, people stood up. The dam broke. What had been my testimony became a reckoning. I sat down slowly, heart pounding, as the room descended into controlled chaos. The chair called for order, but it was too late. This wasn't one story anymore. It was a pattern. Then the board's legal counsel leaned toward the microphone. "We are initiating immediate suspensions," she said, "effective now." I saw it happen in real time. Phones lighting up, messages being read, careers collapsing silently in seats. And then Dr. Keller stood. The room went completely still. "I failed," he said, "but I was not alone." He turned toward the administrators. "They used us, protected us when we were useful, discarded us when we weren't." The words landed like blows. And then he did something no one expected. He looked at me. And she tried to stop it. For the first time since this began, my hands trembled. The chair adjourned the session, but the damage was done. Outside, cameras flashed, microphones crowded my face. "How does it feel?" someone shouted. I didn't answer, because inside I was shaking, not from fear, but from the realization that the system had finally been forced to look at itself. That night, as headlines exploded and statements poured out, I sat alone in my apartment again. The same couch, the same quiet, but everything was different. My phone buzzed one last time. Unknown number. "It's over. You won." I stared at the message. Then I typed back, "No, now it's true." And for the first time since I'd been fired, I slept. When I woke up the next morning, the world hadn't ended. That surprised me. The sky looked the same, cars moved through intersections, people bought coffee and complained about the weather. Life, ordinary, indifferent, went on. But underneath it, something had shifted. My phone was full again, messages from people I didn't know, nurses, med techs, residents, even a few doctors. They weren't congratulating me. They were saying, "Me too." I learned that truth doesn't arrive like a victory parade. It arrives quietly through cracked voices and late-night confessions and emails sent from burner accounts. The board moved fast after that. Suspensions became terminations. Terminations became investigations. Investigations became criminal referrals. The hospital released another statement, longer this time, apologetic, carefully worded. It didn't mention my name. That was intentional, because institutions don't apologize to people, they apologize to the public. And that was okay. I wasn't looking for recognition anymore. I was looking for closure. A week later, I was invited voluntarily into a different hospital. Not to work, just to talk. A small room, 10 nurses, no cameras. One of them asked the question everyone else had avoided. "Weren't you afraid?" she asked. I thought about it. "Yes," I said, but I was more afraid of becoming someone who stayed silent. That seemed to land. Another nurse spoke up. "What if it costs us everything?" I didn't answer right away, because the honest answer isn't comforting. "It costs something," I said. "Always." I didn't get my old life back. Some doors closed permanently, some calls stopped coming, some people crossed the street when they saw me. But other doors opened. I was asked to teach, to consult, to help build systems that actually protected people who spoke up. And slowly, without headlines or helicopters, I started to feel like a nurse again. Not because of a badge, but because of why I chose this profession in the first place. Months later, I received one final message from the same anonymous account that had warned me before the hearing. Just one sentence. "You were right to speak. We should have followed you." I never replied. Some truths don't need responses. I think back often to that day, the walk home, the cardboard box, the moment I thought my life was over. If I hadn't been fired, I wouldn't have been on that road. If I hadn't been on that road, those helicopters would have landed somewhere else. If they had landed somewhere else, the truth might still be buried. We tell ourselves that doing the right thing is a straight line. It isn't. It's messy, it's isolating, it's terrifying. But sometimes it puts you exactly where you're needed when no one else can stand there. I still read comments on my YouTube videos now, stories from people who were betrayed by systems they trusted, people who thought they were alone until they realized they weren't. If this story did anything, I hope it did this. I hope it reminded you that your voice matters, even when it shakes, especially when it shakes. Because silence is easy, truth is heavy, but it's also the only thing that lasts. Thank you for listening.